From Their Eyes, a Shadow of a Colossus based fic. Chapter 17. The Final Hero Falls. Malice watched the edge of his solitary place. He knew the little man would be coming. It wasn't a question of if anymore, but when. Dorman's plan was working out, which was a very bad thing. When he first detected Dorman's actions, he had hoped the other colossi would have been able to stop the little man. He had been certain that the little man would not make it this far on their foolish venture. The little people had been able to spot the truth about Dorman before. Still, the little man seemed to be able to do what should have been impossible. In all his interactions with the little people, especially Lord Iman, Malice thought that it would be impossible for a solo little person to take down one colossi by himself, let alone 15. Yet here it was happening. For a moment he thought back to how he had been fooled long ago in the homelands. He had believed that the elders had been foolish when it came to the shadow beings. He believed that the castle they were imprisoned in was only making them stronger. At least he believed the lie Dorman had initially told him. When he realized the truth, he was just barely able to stop a serious catastrophe. Still, it wasn't soon enough to avoid the exile. He would have mused more on his folly, but his latent powers picked up on something. The gate to his area was opening. The little man was coming. He might have a few chances to stop the little man now, before things got too far. If the little man had to make his way by foot, he wouldn't be able to do so. Before the little people had left and sealed the gate, they had damaged the bridge to his perch. He had done it as a precaution. But he could sense two minds coming towards him. One was almost at basic thoughts, while the other was being coerced. He needed to try and get that one to break the hold on it. He focused on that mind, and soon he reached out to it, in hopes of convincing it of the folly of what it was doing. You need to turn back. A force of great evil is tricking you into releasing it. If you do so now, you may be able to even spare your life. He stopped there when he realized that this mind wasn't the little man, but the very animal he had come to the Forbidden Lands on. He had realized the truth when the figure had started to respond to his statement. I had thought something was wrong, but I can't stop. The master has changed, and I can't get him to reason. He just wants to keep going, all because his mate was killed to prevent a cursed fate. He didn't need to hear any more. The more rational mind was no longer in the little man. If there was any way to reason with them, he would have to do so when they got closer. Or if they got closer. Malice focused on the horse again, and tried to communicate to them. Listen, you need to stop him, or even throw him to his death. He doesn't have much of himself left. If he continues, it will unleash a great evil onto the land, one that will invade and seek more power. He could already sense the animals trying to fight his owner. He could sense the horse was trying to fight the urgings of what passed for its rider. He's not human anymore. He's sprouting horns and wants me to cross this bridge. He keeps urging me forward, and I want to throw him off. He could tell the animal was trying to do just that, but he could sense a familiar influence on the creature's mind, It had to be Dorman keeping the animal in line. Malice tried to give the animal a boost. From what he could tell, the animal was fighting hard, but Dorman's hold on the creature's mind was struggling. He sent part of his willpower to the animal, and he was certain it did the trick. He could sense the animal stopping and throwing its rider. Soon, a sound managed to echo through the area. It was the sound of something crumbling and falling. With that sound, Malice sensed anguish and a sense of loss. At first, Malice thought that the animal had thrown off the little person that had rode it and felt bad for it. It was understandable. Even though the little person was mostly possessed, at least he felt that the threat was gone. Then he felt it. The anguish was gone. The mind he was sensing wasn't the animal, but of the corrupted little person. No doubt the animal had fallen with the bridge. He began to wonder if the animal throwing the little man was what Dorman had wanted. A little person would not be able to make it across the bridge by themselves. The only hope now would be for the little man to fall trying to climb up the side of the cliff. Malice put his focus now on the edge of the cliff, where the little people would approach his place. From his vantage point, he could spot anyone approaching the steps. The steps were actually part of the remains of a structure the little people had built there. Initially, when they first fell for Dorman's lies, they built it believing it would keep a dangerous force at bay, with the possibility of being able to sneak up on it. Now it was his last line of defense. If the little man got past all of that, he would have to do what he could to keep the little man from reaching his head. He would, however, start making things very difficult. Using some of his own powers, he caused a storm to consume the area, making all the stones slick with rainwater. It would take a true master of climbing, or something near fully possessed, to make the climb to his head. Just as the full force of the rain hit, he saw a figure at the base of the steps. Even from the distance, the figure was from his eyes. Malice could see horns on the little person's head, sticking out of their hair. The little person had very little left of itself in them. Reason would not be an option now. Dorman had probably wiped out near all of the little person's life force. Malice had no choice. He had to unleash his full power. With his eyesight, he had no trouble taking aim and launching his fireballs at the figure. He saw the figure start to run, no doubt being directed by Dorman's influence. The evil force no doubt knew where the underground pathways were. Malice just hoped his blast would destroy the little man. If they struck, if the little man held all that power of Dorman in him, though, he had a feeling the little man could withstand more than his brethren could under normal circumstances. He had expected the little man to be fast. He tried to lead the little man to his shots, just like the little people's hunters did with their prey. The little man wasn't going to be so easily hit. Once the little man made it to one of the safe passages, Malice shifted his attention to the place the little man would reappear at. Once he had timed his blast right, and the blast apparently left the little man still. But the little man stirred and quickly made it to the next passage. Each miss made Malice worry more and more. He had to hope the rain now would make it hard for the little man to climb up the fur he had, as well as his stone-like armor. Using his blasts would be out of the picture now, since he could very well put a hole into himself. While he still had a portion of Dorman's power contained in him, the blast would cause him massive damage, and take who knew how long to heal in the Forbidden Lands. Soon enough, he felt something climbing up the armor. The little man had managed to reach him, and was working their way up. On a plus, the rain had intensified, and lightning started streaking across the sky. He hoped that all of this would kill the little man. Due to his height, he was prone to the occasional lightning strike. They never seriously hurt him, but they would sting when they struck. Just as the thought about the lightning crossed his mind, he felt a stabbing in his back. It wasn't a lightning strike, and he reached back to squash the little person. Unfortunately, his hand couldn't reach the spot due to the armor, and he didn't dare blast. It wasn't until he felt something on his hand that he realized what the little man was up to. He pulled his hand away as swiftly as he could, but Malice was surprised that the little man still hung on. Even worse, he felt the little man climb up his arm. Then he remembered the flaming spot on his arm. It was one of 2 points where wounds from long ago still hadn't healed. The result was a flaming barrier formed by his own magic. The little man would never get past that. Again, Mouse had to react as he felt a stabbing pain in that arm, not too far from the flaming magical barrier. Again, he reached for the pain, this time with his other hand, and again realized the folly. The little man must have figured that he would reach for the cause of pain. Before he could pull his other hand away, he felt something start to climb on it. This time, however, the little man didn't have far to go. The flaming magical barrier from another wound encircled Malice's forearm. It also gave him a better view of the little man. Malice could see the little man's skin had gone ashen gray, like that of the corpses of the little people. There wasn't much of what the little people called humanity left in this little person. He knew that the only thing left was to give this little person a mercy killing. For that reason, Mouse kept moving his hand in hopes to dislodge the little man. A fall from the height the little man was at now should surely break him. To his disbelief, the little man kept hold of his hand, and managed to maneuver into a position to shoot an arrow at the opposite shoulder on Malice. While there was a slight wound there, in the darkness of the rainstorm, it should not have been seen by the little man. Dorman's spirit must have more control over the little man than he thought. Again, out of reflex, he reached for the attack point, and as he expected, the little man used the opportunity to get closer to the sacred sigil mark that bound what remained of Dorman's power in him. He had only one option left now. He had to dislodge the little man. He had to shake the little man off to fall to their death. He felt the little man make his way to his forehead, climbing up the back of his head in the process. It was now or never. But as he did so, he tried to reason with the little man, in hopes there was some essence of who they were in there. "Do not do this. You will restore a great evil on the world. He will ruin your world and ours if he is freed." His statement was only responded to by stabs to his forehead. He shook his head more, doing the best he could to dislodge the little man. After a few stabs from the little man, he would have sworn that he had managed to shake the little man off. The stabbing had stopped, so he settled himself down. That had been a mistake, as the stabbing resumed. As it continued, his vision started to blur, and Malice could swear he was hearing things. With each stab, he heard the word "mono" being said. He wasn't sure what it meant, but he had a feeling. No doubt Dorman had promised the little man something linked to that word. It would be the perfect bait to use. Just as that last thought formed, the final stab happened. His mind started to shut down. He would have fallen over had he not been cursed to that spot. All he did do, however, was go limp. In his dying moments he felt what was left of Dorman's essence leave him, no doubt to replace what little was left of the little man. Once that happened, the only thing Dorman had to have happen was that the little man would have to die. The last thought that fully processed in Malice's mind was that must have been Dorman's plan all along. Dorman had finally won in the end.